In the quiet village of Luanda, the sun always rose gently over the green hills, painting the sky with gold and orange. Life in Luanda was simple. People worked hard, shared food, and helped each other. The soil was rich, and every year, the farms gave good harvests. Yet, among all the happy faces, there was one woman whose heart was never at peace: Mama Abeni. Mama Abeni was a widow. Her husband had died many years ago, leaving her with a small piece of land and a young son named Jabari. From the time Jabari was little, his mother worked hard in the fields. She woke before the roosters and came home long after the sun had set. The people in the village respected her for her strength, but they also whispered behind her back. They said she was too proud, too selfish, and too hungry for wealth. And indeed, they were right. Every season, Mama Abeni's field grew more crops than she could ever eat. She filled clay pots with maize, beans, and groundnuts, stacking them high in her hut. When neighbors came to ask for food during hard times, she turned them away, saying she had nothing left to give. "Go and work harder," she would say sharply, her eyes cold and her lips pressed tight. "I cannot feed everyone in this village." Jabari, her son, was not like her. He was a gentle boy with kind eyes and a quiet voice. He often helped old people in the village, carrying water for them or mending their fences. The elders liked him, and the children followed him wherever he went. But Mama Abeni did not like how generous he was. She would scold him every time he gave away something. "Jabari," she said one day, her voice sharp like a knife, "you are too soft. You give everything away, and soon you will have nothing left. You must learn to keep what is yours." "But Mama," Jabari said softly, "what is the use of having plenty when others have nothing? The food will rot if we don't share it." Mama Abeni frowned. "Let it rot," she said. "At least it will still be mine." Her words made Jabari sad. He didn't understand how his mother could work so hard but still have an empty heart. He watched her every day, counting her sacks of grain, polishing her clay pots, and hiding her money under the floor mats. She would smile only when she looked at her growing pile of wealth. But when she saw a hungry child, her face would harden like dry earth. The village people began to talk more openly about her. "Mama Abeni has a strong back but a weak heart," one old woman said. "Even the river gives water to all, but she gives nothing." Others said she was cursed by greed. But Mama Abeni didn't care. "Let them talk," she said to herself. "When famine comes, they will all come to me, and I will sell to them for a high price." One afternoon, after the harvest, the whole village gathered under the big baobab tree to celebrate. There was singing, drumming, and dancing. Everyone brought something to share: roasted corn, sweet yams, fried plantains. Children ran around laughing, and even the elders clapped their hands to the beat of the drums. Jabari wanted to join them, but his mother told him to stay home. "There is no need to waste food and time," she said. "We will keep our share for ourselves." "But Mama," Jabari said, "it is the harvest feast. Everyone is sharing. We should too." Mama Abeni shook her head. "They can dance and sing all they want. When the rains fail, they will remember who has food." That night, Jabari sat outside their hut, staring at the moon. He felt lonely and ashamed. He loved his mother deeply, but he wished she would open her heart. The stars above seemed to whisper that something would soon change. He did not know what, but he hoped it would teach her the value of kindness. As days passed, Mama Abeni's greed grew stronger. She began to hide her food underground in clay pots, afraid that even Jabari would give it away when she wasn't looking. She scolded him for helping others and even forbade him from visiting neighbors. Jabari obeyed, but in his heart, he felt a quiet sorrow. He saw children going hungry and mothers crying because their harvests had failed. Still, his mother said, "Their hunger is not my problem." Then one day, an old man came to their hut. His clothes were worn, and his face was thin. He carried a walking stick and leaned on it heavily. "Good evening, Mama Abeni," he said softly. "I have walked far. May I have a cup of water and a handful of grain? I have not eaten for 2 days." Mama Abeni looked at him coldly. "You have strong legs," she said. "You can work. I am not feeding lazy wanderers." The old man smiled sadly. "You have much, but your heart has little," he said. Then he turned and walked away. Jabari ran after him with a small bowl of maize hidden in his shirt. "Please take this," he whispered. "My mother does not mean harm. She has just forgotten what kindness feels like." The old man took the food and looked at Jabari with kind eyes. "You have a pure heart, my son," he said. "But remember, a tree that grows in shade never feels the warmth of the sun. One day, your mother will learn." That night, Jabari lay awake, thinking about the old man's words. The wind howled softly outside, and the moon hid behind clouds. He wondered if it was true, if his mother would ever learn. Meanwhile, Mama Abony counted her grain for the 10th time, smiling to herself. She imagined all the things she could trade for more wealth: goats, beads, fine clothes. She did not notice that outside, the sky had turned strange and still. The frogs stopped croaking, and even the crickets were silent. The air felt heavy, as if it carried a warning. When Jabari finally fell asleep, he dreamed of the same old man again, standing under the baobab tree. The man said, "Abony's hands are full, but her spirit is empty. Soon she will see that what she keeps will be lost, and what she gives will return." Jabari woke with a start. His heart was beating fast. He looked at his mother sleeping beside her sacks of grain, her hands resting on the pots as if to guard them even in her dreams. He sighed. Something deep inside him told him that the time for change was near. And so, in the quiet village of Luanda, as dawn broke and the first cock crowed, two hearts beat under one roof, one filled with love and worry, the other with fear of losing what it could never truly keep. Neither of them knew that their lives were about to change forever. That night, the air in Luanda felt different. The wind was slow, and even the animals seemed to whisper. Jabari lay on his mat, staring at the small fire dying beside him. His mother, Mama Abony, had fallen asleep long ago, her hand resting protectively on a pot of grain as if it were gold. Jabari closed his eyes, but his heart felt heavy. He could not stop thinking about the old man who had come to their home, hungry and tired, and how his mother had sent him away without a single grain. As sleep slowly came, Jabari found himself standing under the great baobab tree that grew at the edge of the village. The night sky was filled with stars, brighter than he had ever seen. A soft light glowed around the tree, and the air smelled of rain, though no clouds were in sight. From the shadows stepped the same old man he had met before, thin, calm, and wise. His walking stick glowed faintly, and his eyes shone like moonlight. "Jabari," the man said in a gentle voice, "do you know why your mother's heart is heavy?" Jabari looked down and shook his head. "She wants more than she needs," he said quietly. "She keeps everything and gives nothing." The old man nodded. "Greed," he said, "is like fire, it eats what feeds it. Your mother thinks she owns plenty, but her greed will consume her peace, her sleep, and her joy. One day, she will learn that what we keep for ourselves is never truly ours." Jabari listened carefully, his heart pounding. "But how can I help her understand?" he asked. "She does not listen to me." The old man looked toward the sky. "You cannot teach those who refuse to see. But life will. When the sky forgets to rain and the soil grows tired, she will remember your words. You must stay kind, Jabari. You must not let her greed make you bitter." Before Jabari could speak again, a strong wind rose. The stars began to fade, and the old man slowly disappeared, his voice echoing faintly, "Remember, boy, when the world grows dry, kindness will bring rain." Jabari woke suddenly. The morning sun was already breaking through the cracks of the hut. He sat up, breathing fast, the dream still clear in his mind. Outside, roosters crowed, and women were already walking to the fields. He turned to his mother, who was busy tying sacks of grain with a smile on her face. "Mama," Jabari said, "I had a strange dream last night." Mama Abony didn't even look up. "Dreams are for lazy people," she said. "Go fetch water before the sun rises high." But Jabari spoke again, his voice quiet but firm. "I saw the old man who came to our house. He was standing under the baobab tree. He said something I can't forget. He said greed is like fire, it eats what feeds it." Mama Abony stopped tying her sack and turned slowly to look at him. Her eyes narrowed. "So now the old beggar visits you in dreams too," she said with a small laugh. "Maybe he wants you to throw away our food again." Dreams don't fill granaries, Jabari. Work does. Jabari sighed. Mama, it was more than a dream. It felt real. Maybe it's a warning. Warning, she snapped. The only warning I need is this: if we don't keep what we earn, others will take it. That is the truth of life. She turned away and began to hum an old song, ending the conversation. Jabari stood there, feeling helpless. He wanted to tell her more, about the wind, the light, the way the man's voice echoed in his chest, but he knew it would make no difference. Mama Abeni's ears were closed to such things. Days turned into weeks, and Jabari noticed small changes in the air. The rains that usually came in long, soft showers began to stop early. The soil cracked in the fields, and the leaves turned dusty. Farmers in the village looked to the sky every morning, hoping for clouds, but none came. The river that ran through Luanda began to shrink, its banks dry and sad. The elders said it was just a short dry spell, but Jabari remembered the dream. He remembered the old man's words and felt a cold worry in his heart. He told his mother that maybe it was time to share some of their food with the villagers, but she laughed. "The drought will pass," she said confidently. "And when it does, those who wasted their food will come to buy from me. Then you will see, Jabari, it pays to keep what is yours." But the drought did not pass. Each day grew hotter than the one before. The sun felt like a burning stone in the sky. Grass turned yellow, goats wandered weakly, and the wells began to dry. People started to whisper that the gods were angry. Some said that someone in the village had cursed the land with greed. One evening, as Jabari fetched the last bucket of water from the shrinking stream, he saw children scooping mud from the edges, trying to squeeze out a few drops. His heart ached. When he came home, he found his mother sitting beside her pots, fanning herself lazily. "Mama," he said gently, "people are suffering. The children have no food or water. Maybe we can give a little." Mama Abeni frowned. "We worked for what we have," she said sharply. "Did anyone help me when your father died?" "No." "Let them work as I did." "But Mama," Jabari said, "the ground is dry. There is nothing left to grow." "That is not my fault," she said coldly. "We have enough, and that is what matters. The gods bless those who prepare." That night, Jabari lay awake again. He could hear his mother's snores and the faint rustling of rats near the grain pots. The air was hot and dry. He thought of the dream once more, the glowing baobab, the old man's voice, and the warning. He wondered if this drought was what the dream had meant. Days passed, and the village grew desperate. The market was empty, and even the birds stopped singing. Smoke from faraway fires filled the air as people burned dry grass, hoping to chase away bad spirits. Some villagers came to Mama Abeni's hut, begging for food. She stood tall at the door, her hands on her hips, refusing them all. "I have a son to feed," she said coldly. "I cannot give you what I need for myself." Her voice was strong, but inside, Jabari could see that fear had started to grow in her eyes. The drought had become worse than she expected. Even her crops began to spoil in storage, eaten by insects and rot. The fire of greed that had once made her feel powerful now burned her peace away. One evening, as the sky turned red with dust, Jabari saw her staring silently at her hands. Her lips moved softly, whispering to herself. "Why is this happening?" she murmured. Jabari said nothing. He remembered the dream again and the words, "Greed is like fire, it eats what feeds it." The next morning, the last water in their pot was gone. The land outside was cracked like old pottery. The people of Luanda gathered at the dry riverbed, praying for rain. Mama Abeni stood among them, her proud shoulders slumped for the first time. Jabari stood beside her, quiet but hopeful. He looked up at the sky and whispered, "Please let her heart see before the rain returns." Far away, thunder grumbled softly, the first sound of rain in many months. The drought in Luanda grew worse with every passing day. The sky had turned pale and tired. The river was now only a line of dry stones, and the once green fields looked like burnt cloth. Every breath carried the smell of dust. People walked slowly through the village, weak and hopeless. Children cried from hunger, and old men sat under empty trees, staring at the ground. Jabari watched his mother as she sat beside her clay pots, counting her grain over and over again. Her once proud face now looked tight and worried. Some of the maize had gone bad, eaten by worms. The beans smelled strange, and rats had chewed through the sacks. Still, she could not let go. She sat in silence all day, guarding what was left as if it were treasure. Jabari had tried everything. He had begged her to give food to the hungry. He had reminded her of the dream, the old man's warning, and the suffering around them. But Mama Ebony refused to listen. Her heart had grown as hard as the cracked earth outside. "We must survive," she said again and again. "If I give away what we have, we will die with them." One night, as Jabari lay awake, listening to the dry wind push through the cracks of their hut, an idea came to him. He remembered the dream, the old man, the glowing baobab tree, and the voice that said kindness would bring rain. He thought of how to open his mother's heart before it was too late. The idea was small at first, but it grew brighter in his mind, like a spark turning into a flame. The next morning, when Mama Ebony was sorting her grain, Jabari spoke softly, trying not to sound too eager. "Mama," he said, "I heard something strange at the riverbed yesterday." Mama Ebony looked up with tired eyes. "What did you hear?" "Some men were talking about a hidden well in the forest," he said. "They said it is deep and full of clean water. But it is not an ordinary well. It is said to open only to those who have generous hearts." Mama Ebony raised an eyebrow. "A well that opens only to generous hearts," she said, half amused, half curious. "Who told you such nonsense?" Jabari shrugged. "The old men at the river. They said the well was a blessing from the spirits long ago. It hides itself from the greedy, but it welcomes those who are kind. I thought maybe it could help us." Mama Ebony's eyes lit up a little. The thought of a secret water source made her chest fill with hope. Water was more valuable than gold now. "And where is this well?" she asked quickly. "Deep in the forest," Jabari said. "Near the old baobab tree." Mama Ebony frowned. "That far?" "It's not too far," Jabari said gently. "We can go together. Maybe the spirits will see your hard work and bless you." For the first time in weeks, Mama Ebony smiled. She imagined herself finding the secret well before anyone else. She thought of how the whole village would come to her for water, and how she would finally be the most powerful woman in Luanda. She stood up, brushing the dust off her wrapper. "Then we shall go," she said. "If there is water to be found, I will find it." Early the next morning, they began their journey. The forest was quiet. The ground cracked under their feet, and the air smelled dry. Birds had flown away long ago, and even the insects were silent. Mama Ebony carried a gourd, hoping to fill it when they found the well. Jabari walked ahead, leading the way with calm steps. He could feel the weight of his plan pressing on him, but he knew this was the only way to reach her heart. As they walked deeper into the forest, the tall trees began to give shade, and the air felt cooler. Mama Ebony looked around and whispered, "It is strange. The ground here is greener than in the village." "Yes," Jabari said. "The forest remembers how to breathe, even when the fields forget." After walking for a long time, they reached the great baobab tree. Its trunk was thick and wide, and its roots spread across the ground like sleeping snakes. Jabari stopped and turned to his mother. "This is the place," he said quietly. Mama Ebony looked around, confused. "I don't see any well," she said, wiping sweat from her face. Jabari knelt beside one of the roots and began to dig a small hole with his hands. "The men said it will show itself when the heart is ready," he said. "We must prove we are worthy." Mama Ebony crossed her arms. "And how do we do that?" Jabari looked at her and said, "By giving." She frowned. "Giving? Giving what?" Jabari pointed to the path behind them. A group of small children had followed quietly from the village. They looked tired and hungry, their faces thin and dusty. One girl held her little brother in her arms. "They have been following us," Jabari said softly. "They are hungry. Mama, maybe this is a test from the spirits. Maybe the well will open only when you share." Mama Ebony hesitated. Her hands trembled slightly. "Jabari," she whispered, "if I give them what we have, what will we eat?" Jabari smiled gently. "If the well truly exists, we will never go hungry again." For a long moment, Mama Ebony stood still, looking at the children. Their eyes were wide, filled with silent hope. She felt something stir inside her, a feeling she had not known in years. Slowly, she untied her basket. Inside were pieces of dried bread and a small bag of maize. She looked at them once more, then sighed. "Maybe it is worth a try," she said softly. Jabari helped her hand out the food. The children's faces lit up as they ate. Some smiled, others whispered, "Thank you," in small, shy voices. Mama Ebony watched them quietly, her eyes wet. Then something strange happened. A cool breeze blew through the trees. The ground under the baobab trembled slightly. Jabari looked down and saw water beginning to bubble up from the small hole he had dug. It grew and grew until a clear stream poured from the earth, shining like glass under the sunlight. Mama Ebony gasped. "The well!" she cried. "It's real!" Jabari smiled. "You see, Mama? The spirits were waiting for kindness." She fell to her knees beside the spring, cupping the water in her hands. It was cold and sweet, cleaner than any she had ever tasted. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she drank. For the first time, she felt something more precious than wealth: peace. When they returned to the village, the children ran ahead, shouting that water had been found. The villagers followed, carrying empty pots and gourds. Mama Ebony watched them fill their containers and laughed softly. The joy in their faces warmed her heart more than all her hidden grain ever had. That night, she sat outside her hut, staring at the stars. The sky was dark and wide, but she felt no fear. Jabari sat beside her, quiet and content. "Mama," he said, "do you believe now that kindness opens more than hearts?" She smiled faintly. "Yes, my son. It even opens the earth itself." The next morning, when the sun rose over Luanda, the first drops of rain began to fall. The dry earth drank eagerly, and the smell of new life filled the air. Mama Ebony lifted her face to the sky, her eyes closed, her heart lighter than it had ever been. She knew then that her son's plan had not only saved her, it had saved them all. The forest clearing was calm and wide, with tall trees standing like quiet watchers. The ground was soft with fallen leaves, and the air was cooler than the dry wind that had followed them from the village. Mama Ebony looked around eagerly, expecting to see the hidden well Jabari had spoken of. She imagined clear, deep water waiting just for her, enough to make her the most powerful woman in Luanda. But all she saw were tired children standing nearby, their eyes hollow and their bellies empty. Some carried younger ones on their backs, and others held small gourds hoping for water. They looked at her with hope and fear, unsure whether she would help or turn away. Mama Ebony frowned. "Why are they here?" she asked sharply. "This place is not for them." Jabari turned to her calmly. "They followed us, Mama," he said softly. "They are hungry. The well will not open to hearts that are closed." Mama Ebony stared at him, confused and annoyed. "You mean to tell me we came all this way to feed others again?" she said. "We barely have enough for ourselves." Jabari smiled gently. "You taught me how to plant and harvest, Mama. But the old man in my dream taught me something else, that giving is also a kind of harvest. Maybe if we give, the well will appear." His words sounded strange to her, but there was something in his voice, calm, firm, and full of belief, that made her pause. She looked at the children again. Their lips were cracked, their clothes torn, and yet they stood quietly, waiting. No one begged. They only watched her, their eyes glimmering with silent need. Mama Ebony turned away, clutching the small bag of maize she had carried. "If we give all this away, what will we eat?" she whispered. Jabari knelt beside her and placed his hand on hers. "If we share, the spirits will bless us. Didn't you see what happened last time when we gave? The earth listens when kindness speaks." She looked at her son and saw the same innocence she had once seen in him as a child. His faith touched something deep inside her, something she thought had long died. Slowly, with trembling hands, she untied the bag. The dry maize kernels made a soft sound as she poured them into a small wooden bowl. Jabari stood up and called to the children. "Come," he said kindly. "Sit and eat." They came closer, shy and unsure. Jabari handed out the maize, a little to each one. As the food passed from his hands, something strange began to happen. The air changed. The wind that had been hot and dry suddenly turned cool. The leaves above began to tremble. Mama Ebony looked up at the sky. The clouds, which had been thin and white for months, began to gather, slowly at first, then thicker and darker. She gasped. "Jabari," she whispered, "look." He looked up and smiled. "Do you see, Mama? The well is not just in the ground. It is in our hearts." The children laughed as the first drops of rain began to fall. They lifted their faces to the sky, opening their mouths to catch the water. Some danced barefoot in the mud, their joy loud and pure. Jabari laughed too, helping them fill their gourds with the rain. Mama Ebony stood in silence. The rain soaked her hair and her clothes, but she did not move. For a moment, her heart felt heavy, not from pride, but from shame. She remembered the times she had turned away the hungry, the sick, and the old. She remembered the old man's sad eyes when she refused him food. And now, her son's kindness had done what her greed never could. It had brought life back to the land. Tears mixed with the rain on her cheeks. She fell to her knees, her hands trembling as she scooped mud and water together. "I was blind," she whispered. "All this time, I was blind." Jabari came to her side and helped her stand. "It's never too late to see, Mama," he said gently. "The land forgives. So do the people." They watched as the rain grew stronger, washing away the dust and filling the air with the smell of new life. The dry trees began to shimmer with droplets, and small streams formed in the earth, rushing joyfully toward the village. The drought that had gripped Luanda for so long was finally breaking. When they returned home, the village was alive again. People were running into the open, raising their hands to the sky, laughing and crying as the rain poured down. Children splashed in puddles, and mothers gathered buckets to catch the water. The air was filled with songs of joy and thanks. Mama Ebony stood among them, soaked but smiling. For the first time, she felt something she had never felt before: peace. She went to the granary that evening and opened every pot, calling the villagers to come and take what they needed. "This food is not mine," she said loudly. "It belongs to all of us." At first, the people hesitated. They were afraid it might be a trick. But when Jabari stepped forward and nodded, they came. One by one, they took small portions, bowing in thanks. Mama Ebony watched them, tears still falling, though now they were tears of relief and joy. That night, as the rain continued to fall softly on the thatched roofs, she sat beside Jabari at the door of their hut. The sound of the rain was gentle, almost like a lullaby. The air smelled of wet soil and green leaves. The moon peeked through the clouds, silver and soft. "Mama," Jabari said quietly, "do you still think dreams don't fill granaries?" Mama Ebony laughed through her tears. "I was wrong," she said. "Dreams feed more than the stomach, my son. They feed the heart." She reached out and held his hand. "You have taught me something that no harvest ever could. I thought wealth was what made life full, but it was kindness all along." Jabari smiled and looked at the sky. "The old man said greed eats what feeds it," he said. "But kindness gives back what it gives away." Mama Ebony nodded slowly. "Then from now on, I will be kind," she said softly. "I will give, not because I have plenty, but because it keeps my heart alive." As they sat there, the rain washed the last dust from the village. The baobab trees swayed gently in the distance, their roots drinking deeply from the renewed earth. It was as if the whole world had been reborn. When morning came, the sun rose bright and golden. The fields shimmered with new shoots, and birds returned to sing on the rooftops. The villagers worked together to plant seeds again, their laughter echoing through the valley. Mama Ebony joined them, her hands dirty but her heart light. She no longer cared about counting her grain or guarding her storehouse. She had learned that what she gave away came back in blessings far greater than anything she could store in clay pots. And every time the rain fell after that day, the people of Luanda remembered the moment when one woman's heart opened and brought life back to their land. They would say, "It was not the sky that gave us rain, but a mother's change and a son's kindness." Mama Ebony would smile at those words, knowing they were true. Her heart, once dry like the earth, now flowed with love as endless as the rain. The morning after the rain, the village of Luanda was alive with laughter. The sky was blue again, and the smell of wet soil filled the air. Children splashed in puddles, goats bleated happily, and birds sang from the trees as if they were giving thanks. 4 months, the land had been dry and lifeless, but now it shimmered with hope. The people worked quickly, planting seeds in the soft, damp soil. Everyone was smiling, everyone except Mama Abney, but her silence was not from sadness. It was from wonder. She stood outside her hut, watching the villagers, her hands clasped together. Her granary door stood wide open for the first time in years. Inside, the pots that once guarded her pride now stood empty. And yet, she did not feel loss. She felt lighter than she ever had before. The fear that had once tied her heart was gone. In its place was peace, a deep peace that made her smile even when she had nothing left to count. Jabari came out carrying a small wooden bowl of water from the new stream near the baobab tree. He handed it to her. "Here, Mama," he said gently. "The well still flows. The people say it never runs dry now." Mama Abney took a sip, then looked at him with a soft smile. "It is not the well that never runs dry, Jabari," she said. "It is kindness." That day, the whole village came to visit her. Some came to thank her for the food she had given, others came just to see the woman whose change had brought the rain. The elders greeted her with warm hands. "You are no longer Mama Abney the Greedy," one of them said kindly. "You are now Mama Huruma, Mother of Mercy." The name spread quickly, from one family to another, until even the children shouted it as they played. "Mother of Mercy! Mother of Mercy!" they called whenever they saw her. Mama Abney laughed, though tears filled her eyes. She never thought she would be loved like this again. For years she had lived apart from her people, hiding her wealth and guarding her food. But now, her doors were always open. Every morning, people gathered at her home. Some came to share what little they had, others came to help her cook porridge for the children. The sound of laughter and song filled her compound. She was no longer alone. The same hands that once knocked on her door in hunger now reached out to help her build new storage pots. She had nothing left to give from her storehouse, but she gave her time, her strength, and her smile, and that was enough. As weeks passed, the land grew green again. The river flowed stronger, and the trees bore fruit. The fields that had once been brown and broken were now covered in young maize plants swaying gently in the wind. Jabari worked alongside the other young men, planting, weeding, and singing as he worked. Sometimes he looked toward the sky and smiled quietly, remembering his dream, the old man, the baobab, and the promise that kindness would bring rain. Mama Abney often sat under the same tree in the evenings. She would watch the sunset with Jabari and the children who came to listen to her stories. "Long ago," she would begin, "there was a woman who had plenty but gave nothing. She thought she could buy peace with grain and happiness with gold. But one day, her own son showed her that real wealth is not in what you keep, but in what you give." The children always listened with wide eyes, and though they all knew she was speaking about herself, none of them said it aloud. They just smiled and clapped when she finished, and she would laugh, her heart full. Sometimes she visited the old men who had once whispered about her greed. Now they welcomed her warmly and offered her roasted maize and tea. "We knew the drought would end one day," they said, "but we did not know it would end with your change of heart." She would shake her head and say, "It was not my heart alone. It was Jabari's kindness that showed me the way." Life in Luanda became better with each passing season. The rains came when they were needed, and the harvests were good. The villagers no longer feared famine, because they had learned to share with one another. Mama Abney's granary, once locked and guarded, became a community storehouse. People brought their extra grain to keep there, not for themselves, but for anyone who might need it one day. Mama Abney was the keeper, but she no longer called it hers. "This belongs to the village," she said proudly. One afternoon, a traveler came through Luanda. He was old and thin, leaning on a walking stick. His eyes were bright, and his face was kind. When he reached Mama Abney's compound, Jabari ran to greet him with water and food. The man smiled as he ate slowly. Then he looked at Mama Abney and said, "Do you remember me?" She studied his face for a moment, then gasped softly. It was the same old man who had once come to her hut during the drought, the one she had turned away. "It is you," she whispered. "You came again." The old man nodded. "I told your son that life would teach you." And it has. He looked around at the laughter, the food, the green fields beyond the village. You have learned well, Mother of Mercy. Mama Ebony bowed her head. It was a hard lesson, but one I will never forget, she said. Thank you for not giving up on me. The old man smiled and touched her shoulder gently. The earth forgives quickly when the heart learns to share, he said. Then he stood up, looked toward the horizon, and slowly walked away. Jabari watched him until he disappeared into the distance, the golden light of evening wrapping around him like a warm cloth. That night, as the stars filled the sky, Mama Ebony and Jabari sat outside once more. The air was cool, and the sounds of crickets rose around them. Mama, Jabari said quietly, do you think the rain will always come now? She smiled. The rain will come as long as we remember what brought it, she said. It was not prayers or luck, it was love. She looked at her son and touched his cheek. You showed me that love feeds people more than grain ever could. You have given this village life again, my child. Jabari shook his head and smiled. We gave it together, Mama. They sat in silence, watching the moon climb high above the trees. The village glowed softly in the moonlight, the roofs wet from the evening drizzle. From somewhere far away, someone began to sing a slow, sweet song, a song about rain, mercy, and new beginnings. Mama Ebony closed her eyes and listened. She felt the rhythm of life in the song, the laughter of children, the whisper of crops growing, the heartbeat of a land that had forgiven her. She thought of the woman she once was, sitting alone with her pots of grain, and she smiled at how much had changed. When she opened her eyes again, she saw Jabari watching her with love and pride. He didn't need to say anything. The joy in his eyes said everything. From that day onward, whenever rain fell on Luanda, people would run outside laughing, lifting their hands to the sky. And somewhere among them, Mama Ebony, now Mother of Mercy, would stand with her face turned upward, smiling as the drops kissed her skin. Jabari would always look at her and smile too, not because of the rain itself, but because he knew what had truly fed the village. It was not the food, not the water, not even the well. It was love, a love that had healed a mother's heart and given life